Hey there, just hopping on before this month's recorded session of IT Office Hours where we're digging into how Andromeda just made the switch over to Microsoft Teams, so you can too. Just wanted to make sure I invited you ahead of time to our upcoming session that's going to be on Wednesday, March 18th at noon per usual for about 15 to 30 minutes. And we're going to be digging into something pretty exciting. So Office 365, many people are familiar with, but Microsoft has released a new offering in the software as a service world called Microsoft 365 or M365. And we're just going to take a little bit of time to dig into what that product is, what it has to offer, and where it might make sense for you and your business. So you'll find the registration link right below this video. Feel free to click on that and get that on your calendar right away. And without further ado, welcome to the magic of Teams. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking some time today to join our webinar in the IT Office Hours series that we do here at Andromeda. Today we're going to dig into Microsoft Teams. I know everyone's pretty excited about this one. There's a lot of questions. It's a fantastic tool. You may or may not already be utilizing it for your organization, but Andromeda recently, as of about a month and a half ago, made the switch from the chat tool Slack over to Microsoft Teams. We figured we would jump on board so that we could better support and educate and give back to the community. And also, we just know that the tool has a lot of different capabilities and functions to offer us. So I'm very excited to share with you guys what we did to approach that and kind of how we helped our staff get through it. We've got about 50 or so, we hover right around there, 50 employees here. So that's a lot of different people to kind of introduce to a new software and a new solution, and I'm just really excited to share this with you. Now, I would love to encourage any questions or comments that you've got during the presentation. Feel free to throw those into our chat box here. I will be monitoring that, and I will do my absolute best to get you the answers that you need and that you want. And if I don't have the answer for you, I've got a whole team of people that I can lean on, and I will get that for you. So I guess we'll kick this off for everybody that's here already. Why don't you throw in the chat for me whether you are or are not currently using Teams for your whole organization, just so I can kind of get a better feel for where you guys are all at. And while you're doing that, I guess we'll just kick it off because I'm going to go over just kind of what IT Office Hours is for those that are joining us for the first time. So like I said, this session right here is IT Office Hours with Andromeda Technology Solutions. We're committed to educating our clients and community on important topics in technology, cybersecurity, and productivity. This is going to be a monthly series. I try to keep it to the third Wednesday of the month, if and whenever possible. And we do it at noon to hopefully not get in the way of any meetings that you may already have. But we dig into things, like I said, related to compliance, cybersecurity. We do things like today where we dig into popular tools to make sure that you're getting the most out of them. And I have noticed a very strong interest in Office 365 and the different things that it offers to you. So I'm going to make sure that I get a lot more content related to that out to our channel, our clients, partners, and friends of Andromeda. But that's kind of what this all is. It's a quick 15-minute bite-sized session where we're really just trying to offer you guys some education and some assistance on some things that maybe we can guide you through. So what is Microsoft Teams? I always start this off just by kind of addressing the topic itself, right? Many of you are probably familiar with it, but some of you may not be so familiar with what Microsoft Teams is. And essentially, Microsoft Teams is just a chat and collaboration tool similar to an IM, an instant messenger that you might be using with your Apple products, or like I said, you may be currently using something like a Slack tool, but Teams is just Microsoft's response to that. And the great thing about Teams, though, is it is not only a communication tool, but it's also a collaboration tool, because with the magic and the power of Teams, we can access and leverage things like your OneDrive so that you can live collaborate with documentation. You can pull people in so that you are in real time, whether they're in the office or in the field. You're able to communicate and collaborate, and it's all pretty seamless. That's really the most beautiful thing about Teams, is the empowerment it gives your team. I'm going to say teams a lot today, I apologize, but it's really about the empowerment it gives your team to collaborate on the go and get things done quicker and faster and more efficiently. So I do need to mention Microsoft Teams is a part of the Office 365 family of products. So if you currently have an Office 365 license, you probably have access to Teams already. This is the solution that you use, your Word, your Excel, PowerPoint, SharePoint, like I said, and that may be something that you may not know what SharePoint is, or OneDrive. Those are two cloud-based document management systems that are available to you via Office 365. But Teams is really just another cloud-based application and on-prem on your device application that comes with the Office 365 suite. So before I dig in too deep into kind of what we did to get ourselves migrated over to Teams, I just want to cover a few quick frequently asked questions just to make sure that you guys know how to access Teams, how to get it if you have it, those types of things. So I'm going to kick those out of the way real quick. First question is, how do I get Teams? Now, I already mentioned Teams is a product that is bundled in with the Office 365 licenses. Licenses that include Microsoft Teams are Business Essentials, Business Premium, and the Enterprise are the E licenses, the E1, E3, and E5. Essentially, if you're using a business grade solution for Office 365, you should have access to Teams. And if you don't believe you've got access to Teams and you do have one of the licenses that I've listed above or that are clear on the screen here, please do get in touch with your IT team or Andromeda so we can dig into that a little bit further. Then additionally, I wanted to cover what devices support Microsoft Teams. Just like all the other Office products, if you've got a Windows PC or a Mac, you can access Teams. And then one of the other great things about Microsoft Teams is that you can make use of it through your cell phone or your tablets or your laptops and mobile devices. So Android, iPhone, or iOS, those both cover Teams. And then there is also a cloud app available. And what I mean by a cloud app is that you can go to a URL in your web browser, whether that's Chrome or IE or Firefox, and you can access Microsoft Teams in the cloud on the go if you need to. How is Teams organized? So this is something that gets a little bit confusing for many, but it's actually pretty simple, and I think this graphic really is going to help kind of make the bigger picture clearer for you guys. So Teams is used on an organization level, so your entire business. So for instance, Andromeda, the organization, uses the application Teams. Teams is broken down into different teams of people. And that can be done based on department. So you may have a sales team, you might have a marketing team, you may have technical staff, that team, or whatever different teams are within your actual organization, the operations team, the billing department. All those different areas of the business can have their own team comprised of the people that make up that department or that team, if you will. And then underneath the team are going to be what we call channels. So in Microsoft Teams, a channel is really just going to be a topic. So for instance, in the marketing team, I've got our social media channel where the teammates that I have that are putting together our social media agenda and our content can communicate with each other on that specific topic. A team can also be something like a committee. So at Andromeda, we have what we call the X team, and that is built up of leaders or teammates that are from each and every department, and we bring everybody together to discuss different cross-departmental issues to help improve things without needing to bring in the leadership team. So we've got a team dedicated to the X team in Teams, and underneath that we've got separate channels that are going to be related to the different projects or topics that we're working on. And again, it really just streamlines communication. Within a channel, you're going to have chat, so you're going to have actual instant message communication. You can share files with one another that are related to the products. You can also share notes with OneNote. That is another program that's in Office 365 that I should mention. And then you can move forward between different tabs and things of that nature. So I know that that's a pretty high level description, but it's a good way to just remember that Teams is an organization-wide application that's broken down into the different segments. Those could be departments, those could be different committees. That's really just any grouping of people that works for your business. You put those people into a team, and then that team has separate channels that are going to be dedicated to different topics or projects. I hope that makes sense. And if there are any questions, throw those into the chat and I'll address those at the end of the presentation. Next question is going to be really just, what types of communication are possible with Teams? So as opposed to other IM software that you may have used in the past where it's all just digital typed communication and maybe you can share images or you can upload files, Teams opens up a lot of different communication avenues for you. So I've listed a few of those here. You can do direct instant messaging, person to person. You can do group instant messaging where you pull in multiple members that are related to a topic and you guys can all communicate together. You can do audio calls and video calls, and I would love to share with you guys, since I do calling on Teams within our organization, and I also use our Zoom tool to do webinars like this and to do web calls with clients and things of that nature. And I'll say Teams has a fantastic call and audio quality as long as you've got the bandwidth, your internet connection strong enough. I mean, the quality of the calls and the video in Teams surpasses Zoom and any of the other applications that I engage with. So I've been very pleased with that. So you can do those calls, and then you can do those one-on-one, or you can do them in a group fashion. So group audio, group video. You can do group collaboration in Teams in documents. So you can open up an Excel document right in the application itself, and you can work with your teammates in Microsoft Teams to make changes and to communicate and do all of that in real time. And then another really neat feature of Teams is that it allows you to communicate internally. So I can speak with anybody at Andromeda, but with proper admin and setup, you can actually also extend your Teams environment to help communicate with clients. So that may be, in the legal market, you may be able to communicate with some clients there. For us, we're able to open things up to communicate with some of our clients. Obviously, there are definitely compliance and, communication, like legal standards for all of that. So you want to make sure that whatever avenue, whatever business that you're in, that you're making sure you're compliant. Obviously, medical, we would need to concern ourselves with HIPAA. Really any business, we would need to make sure that we're covering ourselves for PII, or personally identifiable information, those types of things. But for many B2B businesses, internal and external capabilities via Microsoft Teams are fantastic. So those were the high-level questions that I wanted to address before we dug into kind of how we made our switch. There are a ton of other questions out there just related to the product, what it can do, what it can't do. And I would absolutely encourage you, you can email me directly, or you can get in touch with your technical account manager on our side. We're always here for you, and we'll definitely dig into things. I love learning new things about these tools, so throw any questions you've got my way and I'll dig in. But so now I just want to turn the page and switch over to, how did we make the switch so you can too? So I'm going to break this into kind of a step-by-step process. I plan to, I think I'll deliver this to you guys in a digital format, because we're going to go over a bunch of different things, and I know it's going to be hard to remember everything I go through, and so I want to make sure you guys get this. But without further ado, we're going to talk about kind of what we did to make that transition here at Andromeda. So step one is going to be, we're just going to ask some questions, right? We're going to probably get a couple different people at your organization in the room, some thought leaders, people who are very engaged, who understand the different processes and needs and procedures at your business. And we're going to ask some questions. And I've got these listed here. So the first question I would ask is, how do these different job functions and roles use instant messaging right now? So for instance, at Andromeda, we've got admin, we've got technical staff in the field and in-house. We've got our service desks, then we've got technicians outside of the office. We've got, like I said, that's technical and remote workforce. Then we've also got sales and marketing, right, who are using the systems and the IMs and things completely different than, let's say, our IT technicians would. And I'm sure that your business has a variety of different roles and functions that you would want to list out, right? So we want to make sure we're asking, what are the different types of employees and staff that we have at our company? And then we want to say, okay, how are they using instant messaging right now, so that we can make sure that we are maintaining that standard, that communication standard from whatever tool you're using. And maybe you're not using a tool at all, but then you'd want to ask yourself, how might they use an instant messaging software? So then, do we want to use Teams for video and audio calls as well? Like I mentioned, it was a little bit strange for us at first. We had never had video calling that I could call anyone in this building and just pop up on their screen. And that can be a little bit strange for some people, right? And maybe your business says, we don't want to use video or audio call. We just want to use this for instant messaging and digital communication in that way. And that's fine. But if you are going to use it for video and audio call, you definitely want to look into, what webcams are we going to need to purchase? Do we need to purchase microphones? Things of that nature, just to make sure that your team has the tools that they need to make the most out of the software from the get-go. Then, are there any existing integrations or workflows we need to consider? So if you're using an existing instant messaging software, is it doing anything extra? Are there any channels that are currently being used that have, an API that connects to a different software and makes something happen, right? Are there any workflows that would be interrupted by making this switch? And if so, how are we going to make sure that Microsoft Teams is able to fulfill that need for us, right? Do you plan to use Microsoft Teams with people outside of your company? So like I had mentioned in previous slides, Microsoft Teams does have the capability and the option for you to be able to use it to communicate with your clients or even vendors. So you could communicate with us, right? And you just want to ask yourself and ask the leadership and those decision makers at your company, is that something we want to explore? If so, you want to make sure that you're digging into that, thinking about it, learning about it, and making sure that you plan for success. Set yourselves up to achieve success. So then finally, another question, and again, these questions are not exhaustive. There are other questions, of course, that you might want to ask, and I would encourage you to reach out to your IT team or Andromeda, I would hope, so that we can kind of help wrap all of our brains around this type of a project. But what level of involvement do you want to have in managing the environment, right? So what I mean by that is in Microsoft Teams, you're going to want to have somebody or maybe a couple different people that can be the admin. And that really just means those are the people who set up channels, who set up different teams, who give access to the teammates. And also, I think, you want to identify a key person at your company who's going to be the first level of those day-to-day questions that your team is going to have on using Teams. So for instance, something like, if somebody doesn't know how to make an audio call and they just need to ask somebody really quick, you wouldn't necessarily want them to have to wait for your IT team to help with that. Far better to have people that are designated within each department to do that for their own team, right? So once you've asked all these questions of yourselves and you guys are ready to really start taking the action to make this movement, the next thing that I'm going to say, step 2, is going to be just to set up a test environment. And we won't get into all the nitty-gritty details of how to do that because, again, that's something we would task out to our admin or your IT team. But what I mean here is just create a dummy channel, create a test channel, put a few different people in it. And this is going to be the space that over the next period of time that we're going to just get in and interact with the tool and test it out and learn on our own. Because, and I hate to put it this way, but when it comes to Microsoft Teams and a lot of the different Office 365 products that have these new capabilities and new functions and great features, the best thing to do is really just to get in and play. You can obviously make time like this where you engage with trusted vendors who are going to help show you some of the new features and tools. But everything that I've learned by digging in myself or working with other teammates that I have at Andromeda to kind of learn about things. I've done my Googling and all of those things, and that really is going to be the best way for any and everybody to get the most out of the tools is just to dedicate some time to test. But so step 2 is we're going to set up a test environment, and that's really going to be pretty basic. Like I said, just a test team with some test channels underneath it so that we can start playing and learning how the tool works on your own before you expand it to other people. Step 3 is going to be pick a couple of Teams testers. So, now that you've done some thinking on the different roles and users your team has for Teams, I would suggest that you grab one person that fits each of those roles to be a part of your beta test, right? So this is, like I said, the number one thing you can do to ensure a good Teams launch, and we would call this a committee. I mentioned earlier, we did this through a committee that we have at Andromeda called the X team, where we did have a member of every single department present, and that person was going to be the representative of that department that would get in and test and learn kind of, in my job, I do X, Y, and Z, and this is how I get that done in Teams, those types of things. So we just want to go around the company and grab a few different people, a few good men, if you will, or ladies, and we're going to ask them to jump in with us and help us start doing this testing so that they can help us launch this for the whole company. And oftentimes you're going to have a lot of eagerness to do that just because, like I said, there's a lot of interest in Teams in Office 365. It's a very catchy and fun tool, and we're all just just waiting to get our hands on it. So I would imagine that your team, you'd have some members that would be more than willing to do this testing for you. And the other thing that's really great about picking a couple of Teams testers is that you are pre-selecting the individuals I mentioned before that can be your internal resource to help troubleshoot and answer questions of the other teammates when you do your soft launch. Because again, you would far rather have teammates asking another teammate how to send a direct message than to have to submit a ticket to your internal or external outsourced IT team to get that resolved. It would just kind of gum up the works for you. It would make things less efficient on your end. And I'm sure you can understand how that would be best suited to be able to kind of handle internally. Obviously, we're always here to help you with any of those questions. But even at Andromeda, we're a technology company, but we've got a lot of employees here who aren't so technical. And it was really great to have Teams testers so that any member on in our company could lean on those guys instead of going to our IT technicians and pulling them off of working for you guys, right? So step 4 is going to be set a date and test it out, right? So we're going to set a date for the testers. This is not a date for the company. We're going to set a date that we're going to give ourselves for the committee itself to go out and play with the tool. So we're going to pick a date that your team agrees is enough time to dig in and test. Of course, this is not set in stone. This is movable. If you guys start getting in there and you realize that there's a lot more to this than you originally anticipated, we can move that date out further. We do this with intuition. And then we're going to ask the testing team to use Teams for any and all things they can. So this is going to sound a little funny, but you might find yourself during the Teams testing phase or the committee testing phase, you may find yourself responding to those teammates and saying, hey, instead of emailing me, put this in Teams. And you've got to kind of try to build that muscle memory just to make sure that as the champion or the owner or the manager of this process, you are supporting your committee in making sure that they are committed to using Teams. Because oftentimes we just forget to use that tool and we want to go straight to email or straight to picking up the phone or any number of things. So, when we were doing our testing, Jeff Borrello, our CEO, was one of the members that would be in that with us. And oftentimes I would pick up a handset, the phone on my desk, and I'd give him a call and he'd go, why didn't you call me on Teams? Just to make sure that we were building that muscle memory so that we could then extend that throughout the organization. And then just to share with you guys, our group tested Teams for about 2 months before we took Microsoft Teams into the soft launch phase. So that subcommittee was in the tool playing around. And, yes, it was a bit annoying because we were floating between 2 different programs, but we knew we were doing that with a purpose. But we took a good amount of time. This isn't something that we just said, okay, we're going to test it for a week and then we're going to deploy it. And I mean, you obviously could do that, but I do think that giving yourself the time to really get into the tool and test it out is going to pay you back in spades. So step 5 is going to be after that date has come that ends the committee's testing, you want to review the findings, right? So I should mention that that testing environment, that channel that you built at the beginning for the committee to use, that's going to be the area you're going to go back through all of that data. You could do this in a spreadsheet, you could do it in a Word doc, you could do it just from the chat itself. But you just want to review all the different things that the committee was able to find with respect to your organization and what they believe is going to be the best with respect to the use of it at your company. You're going to compile all that together, and then what we did is we created a checklist that we distributed to every single member at the company that had specific actions that we required for them to take so that we could make the cutover. And I can share, this is step 6, is soft launch with the checklist. So once you built the checklist, now we need to launch the checklist. I included in here just a snip of what our checklist looked like. I don't know if, I think this should be legible, but so it was the Microsoft Teams implementation checklist part 1. And I put this together for our team. I focused primarily on communicating with teams. Outside of the sales and marketing department, we really are using Teams primarily just to communicate. My department uses it a lot more for collaboration and documents, PowerPoint presentations like this and things of that nature. But for the first step, I really just wanted the company to focus on communicating in Teams, just learning how to send messages, learning how to do video calls, learning how to do all of those things. And I broke this down into a few different categories. I will try to make this available to everybody on the webinar so that you guys can check this out later, since I think it is something that you pretty much could use on your own as well. But so things in here were just, start a one-on-one chat with a coworker. So that's, a person-to-person IM. Then you start a conversation with more than one coworker. I wanted to make sure that people knew how to add people to a conversation, which is number 3. Add a teammate to a conversation. 4, tag a contact into a group convo. One of the things that Teams does is you can or tag somebody so that they get a specified notification letting them know, hey, you are being called out in a channel. I wanted people to learn how to leave a conversation, since maybe sometimes you were in something for a reason, but you don't need to be in a channel long term. I wanted you to know how to change your status. So in Teams, you can set your status to different things. You can be away, you can be do not disturb, any number of things, and that's going to change the ability for the application to send you notifications. So I wanted our team to be able to do that on the fly. You'll see I highlighted in here specifically, and this is how the document went out to my team as well, but 7 was upload a file to a chat with a teammate, because again, we can collaborate in real time. this was one of the things that I was so frustrated about when we first started using Teams, because I just couldn't figure out how to do it. I kept trying to upload files directly from my machine into Teams, and it wouldn't work. And the reason for that was because I wasn't saving my files in OneDrive. So we can dig into that at another time, and I've actually got another webinar on the difference between OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams, and how they all work together. So if you're interested in that, throw that in the chat for me, and I'll get you a link to it. But Teams is also, I have to say, only as good as the other software that you're using. So you need to kind of have a fundamental understanding of OneDrive and SharePoint. And then 8 and 9 of this list were, again, just related to the basics, as I call them. Send an important message and send an urgent message. So those are just different types of messages that are sent through Teams that have different levels of priority, and they will notify you a little bit differently. You can even see in here I included, an urgent message will alert the recipient every 2 minutes for 20 minutes and send them an email to notify them of your message. So if you really want to bug somebody, or if you really need to get a hold of somebody, you can definitely send them an urgent message. Step 7, and I mean, it goes without saying, you'd send out that checklist. I apologize I didn't include this, but if you send out that checklist, you also just want to set up a date that you communicate to the team that they need to have it done, because just sending out the checklist does not mean that the team is going to make the time to do it. I know we're all busy. We all have full-time jobs, and the last thing that some people are going to want to do is take the time to check off all these different check marks. But to set yourself up for success here, do set a deadline and make sure that you stick to that. Make sure everybody's accountable to it. One of the things that we did as well is, again, that subcommittee of people that did the testing, we kind of passed a little bit of the accountability there. We said, okay, you're responsible to make sure that every member in your department gets this back to me, right? So that we can make sure that everybody's in it together and everybody's supporting it, and that we're setting people up for success. Because the last thing that we wanted to do was do this cutover and then have teammates who didn't do their checklist, up in arms and what's the word I'm looking for? Unable to do their jobs because they didn't, check these things off. But step 7 is really just going to be keep investigating and learning even after the cutover. So Microsoft Teams and all of the Office 365 products are changing constantly. They get updates in real time. Now, you may not see all of the updates all the time because Microsoft kind of, puts those out in waves to ensure quality assurance. But there's new things popping up every so often, and you want to make sure that you're staying up on the newest features, the newest updates, different changes. And then the other thing is, no matter how much you take the time to really think this through and try to plan, there are going to be things that you're just not going to think of, and you're not going to figure those out until the entire company is using the software, right? So one of the other things I would recommend for sure is having the team's admin set up an ongoing update channel, or whatever you want to call it. But make sure that your team knows that this is a place when they find nifty features or cool things, they should share it here so that the whole company can see it. And then separately, you can also push out some of those updates. Even when Andromeda does a webinar on the different things that are going on in Teams, as I plan to do in 2020, you could include a link to that to your entire team in that channel so that they can kind of view things on the go. So step 8, and I kind of covered this a little bit, and I'm more than willing to dedicate some more time to any questions you may have, or we can set up individual time, or I can, if you give me some ideas for some of the things that you guys are interested in, I can dedicate future IT office hours sessions to these programs specifically. But step 8 is really just going to be make sure you explore the other Office 365 programs as well. From where I sit, I think that to get the most out of Teams, you really want to understand how OneDrive, Teams, and SharePoint all work. I can briefly go over this for you guys real quick in case you're not in the know on these. OneDrive, for all case and purposes, is your drive. OneDrive is your one place where you can save all of your documentation and your items in the cloud. So you do want to make sure that if you're using Office 365, that you're encouraging all of your team to make use of OneDrive and not to share documents locally. The only documents they should save on their PC itself would be things related to, I would say, their personal life, or that nobody would ever need access to. Otherwise, please make sure you're telling your guys and your gals to save things to OneDrive directly. Microsoft Team is the place where the team gets active and chats and collaborates and works on things together in real time. And then SharePoint is going to act as your organizational database. So that's going to be essentially your cloud server. So this is where all the different documents that any department might need should be uploaded. Just because you put them in SharePoint doesn't mean that everyone can see them. You can set things up so that only certain people have permission to go into certain spaces and all of those good things. But yeah, OneDrive is for you. Teams is for your team, and SharePoint is where we share documents across the whole organization. And there's a lot more to it than that, but I'm trying to keep this as brief as possible for you guys, of course. So with that said, I'm going to open this up to some question and answers. So, what do you guys have for me? And I'm going to read through what's been coming in throughout the session so that I can maybe answer some questions that are already there. Oh, I've got one here for using Planner within Teams. Yep, that is something that I want to get into. We were trying to use Planner for Teams. And again, for anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's just another one of the cloud-based applications that you get with the majority of the Business Essential and Business rated subscriptions. But Planner is just what it sounds like. It is a planner. One of the interesting things was, though, is I created a task for somebody in there and it didn't notify them. So there are some limitations, or at least there were some limitations in Planner, but that's a good one. I can dig into that. Somebody wants a link to the webinar on OneDrive SharePoint. Absolutely. Yep, Teams versus OneDrive versus SharePoint. Sounds like that's a good one. The upload for the OneDrive issue, yep. What I may be able to do is outside of this webinar, I'll create a video of how to do that we can send out to anybody who's interested on a one-on-one basis. Can we get the slide deck after? Normally I don't give out the slide deck, but I actually was thinking that this would be a good one to send the deck for because I have all those questions in there, so absolutely. Why do I use Zoom along with Teams? Because I haven't dug in and done the research just yet to learn how to use Teams to do my webinars, but primarily just because this is what I'm using right now and I just haven't made the time to figure out how to make that transition. But once I do, I absolutely will share that with everybody. I do see a few attendees here who were talking about how they're using Teams, but maybe the whole company isn't, and that can get pretty difficult just because you're using different avenues. So I do hope that this gave you guys a good path and maybe a good foundation to think about how you could get your entire organization to use it. If this brings up any questions for you, or if you've got any other questions after the fact, please feel free to reach me. Everybody here has my email address. That's abbyl@wenetwork.com, A-B as in boy, I-L as in Larry at wenetwork.com. Oh, looks like I got another message. Oh, that's a good one too. A day in the life of how you use Teams. That's great. But yeah, so abbyl@wenetwork.com. Feel free to shoot any questions my way. Of course, you guys all have account managers. If you are not a client of Andromeda's just yet, you can always use me as a resource. Pick up the phone, give us a call, 815-836-0030. Again, I'm looking to learn more and more about Teams and Office 365. And I did have one question for those of you guys that have hung out. We do the monthly IT office hours on the third Wednesday of every month, and I know that every month, every topic doesn't make sense for everybody. But one of the things I was thinking about is doing maybe a quarterly session where we would dig in for like a half hour on the new things that I've learned in Teams and that our company, rather, not just me, but our whole company has learned using Teams and the new things that we're doing with it. So I would love for those of you that are still here if you would ping and say if that's something you'd be interested in. I was also thinking about maybe creating a regular blog series where I do maybe the top 5 or the top 10 new things we're using in Teams and SharePoint and OneDrive and all of those different programs every month. But I just really want to make sure I'm providing you guys with the most valuable content. So anything that you guys have, any interests, any ideas, I will always make sure to get that to you. Absolutely. And that's the thing. I would love to get into Teams now. And the one thing I didn't do in this session that I want to do for you guys, I want to open the application itself and go to different spots and in real time show you what it's like to work in Teams. And I will absolutely do that in a future session. Wonderful. Okay. Well, if there are no other questions, I'll hang out for another 30 seconds or so. So if anything else pops up, throw it my way. But if there's nothing else going on, then I will hop off of here. And again, I just appreciate all of you guys for taking some time to jump in. And I hope to see you next month. And I guess that's it. Enjoy using Teams. It's me again, just hopping on real fast to remind you once again, in case you didn't have a second to do it before, to make sure you reserve some time on your calendar for our upcoming IT Office Hours session for March. That's going to be on Wednesday, March 18th at noon. We'll be covering Microsoft 365 or M365, one of Microsoft's new software as a service programs, and how it might be beneficial to your business and what it does and all those goodies. So hope to see you there, and be well.